Hello and welcome to Rich Rides. This week I'm on the Indian Motorcycles FTR750S. So firstly, how do you describe this bike? It doesn't really fit into any normal category. It's not a naked bike, even though there's no screen or anything. It's not a sports bike, it's not an adventure bike, it's not a cruiser. It's derived from the Flat Tracker racer. So Indian have a huge sort of flat tracking community in the States, and there's always been rivalry between Indian and Harley Davidson in flat track racing, which, like I say, is huge over in the States. Indian do really well in that. They have a 750 that looks very, very similar to this. What they did, they made a road going version of that as a sort of limited run, and they instantly sold out. So their marketing bods obviously thought, maybe there's an appetite for this. Can we build a street bike? And that's exactly what this is. So like I say, it's not really a naked bike, it's sort of in its own little category. I can't think of any other bikes that are sort of in this category really. So first of all, let's talk about the seating position. So you're fairly bolt upright with these straight bars going out. The pegs are below, and you can see my legs are at quite an angle. So your feet and the pegs are behind and below your bum. So it's quite a sporty position, but it's still very comfortable. So from a practical point of view, mirrors work well, they don't vibrate at all. They're not huge, but fairly run-of-the-mill, but they do the job nicely. Like I say, there's no vibrations or anything like on some bikes. This dashboard's lovely, really clear TFT. You've got different things. What I'll probably do is when I stop, then I'll go through some of that. Just taking it extremely carefully, because as you can see, the roads are damp and it's been dry for a while. So we've got wet roads and there's bits of mud everywhere. So fortunately we're just starting to go into autumn. It's the beginning of October, and even here in the Czech Republic, we've had a stunningly hot summer, and I'm afraid the temperature's dropping. And yeah, so the roads are a bit greasy, so I'm being especially careful. So as well as this lovely TFT dash, it's got absolutely everything electronic wise, this bike. You can control most stuff through the TFT, but as well you can do things on the left hand. There's a little joystick down here, so flasher is normal, cruise control, like I say, you can change modes and go through menus with a joystick there, and then of course your indicators. The indicators is a bit smaller and not like a normal one, but you soon get used to that. And then over on the right is just your kill switch really. As I said, this bike's got stacks of goodies, electronics, so yes, you've got all these different ride modes and that kind of stuff, but everything's really adjustable. So you've got three main modes, sort of rain, which I might put into in a minute, the standard, and then sport. But as well as that, you've got a track mode, and you can turn absolutely everything off if you want. I don't think I'd be doing that because it is a bit of a hooligan, this bike, but yeah, it's good that you can do anything you actually want to with it. So as you'd expect with different modes, then of course it's got ABS, but it's got the lean angle, so cornering ABS, so that's really good. Anti-wheelie control, all sorts. I'll put a link to all the full specs rather than just reel off a brochure, as I usually do in the description and the comments. Weight wise, then this bike It's got a big 1200 motor in it, so it's not going to be a lightweight. I think it's 220 kilos, but because all the weight is very low, it doesn't feel heavy at all. So even at sort of these low speeds, it doesn't feel like you're riding a big lump. So as well as it being full of electronics and all those goodies, then spec-wise everything is top-notch. So things like the brakes are Brembo. On the front it's got twin discs 4-pot calipers. On the rear it's a single disc and twin pot calipers. The rear brake's decent and the front brake is absolutely stunning. At low speeds it's a bit too stunning, but I think if you were really going for it, you can definitely rely on these brakes. So something I'm realising the more I ride this bike is that it really prefers being out on the open road, the big faster roads rather than small slow roads, big sweeping bends rather than slow hairpins as well, and smooth tarmac. So as a track bike, it'd be really interesting to see what it's like on a track, because it's really about performance, this bike, and if you're not revving it and you're not going fast, it doesn't like it as much, and it's, as a rider, it's not as pleasurable an experience. As soon as you get a bit of speed up and start cornering faster, inspires lots more confidence. At slow speeds, even though I'm just getting used to it and speed isn't really my thing with bikes, then I can tell the difference, and I don't feel confident at low speed on this bike. As I say, I think that's down to me rather than the bike, but you can tell it's, the engine feels lumpy at low revs. So I guess what I'm really saying is that because this is a performance bike, it's not a sports bike, it's a flat tracker, but that's a performance bike. Because of that, then you need to ride it as one. Obviously on a road like this one, where it's a 30 mile an hour speed limit and there's houses and you have to go slowly, then it's not designed for that. So it's not really at home there. But you get out onto the bigger, faster roads with big sweeping bends, and it's stunning because that's what it's been built and tuned for, I guess. Like I say, at sort of low revs, then it's a bit lumpy is the engine, but at high revs it's stunning. Well, we're just stopped in these traffic. I'll show you that it's got different displays as well. So you can have that one that's got the sort of fuel kilometres left, trip meter. It's even got a little compass down here. The temperature outside of it isn't great. I'm in rain mode at the moment because it is a little bit rainy. Or on this one, you've got the same sort of information, just displayed in a different way. And it's really decided to start raining now. Right, we're back after having to abandon yesterday's ride due to that torrential rain that you just saw. It's a lot brighter day today and a bit warmer. So I've actually had this bike for 2 days rather than the sort of half day I normally do, so I've got to know it a lot better and in different sort of conditions. So yesterday started off nicely, but then became awful, did the weather. So I got caught in a downpour, the river's running across the road. I've got some footage that I'll just put on now, and it was absolutely shocking. And that really didn't show this bike to its best. I think because I was so cold, wet and miserable, then it was probably skewed anyway. But yeah, today it's a lot warmer, dry, sunny, and the bike feels completely different. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Renault Indian motorcycles. So they're the Indian main dealer in the city of Brno in the Czech Republic. So not only do these guys know these bikes inside out, they really do. I've never known someone with such product knowledge. They also gave me some hints on some roads to come out on, and these roads definitely haven't disappointed. We've got a bit of traffic on this one, but there's some lovely roads within sort of half an hour of where they are. So if you're in this sort of area, I highly recommend getting in touch with them. If you're here on holiday, something like that, then they rent motorbikes too. So you could actually rent this exact bike that I'm on and have as much fun. I've done quite a few hours on this bike and feel absolutely fine. So yeah, so comfort wise it works nicely, and I'm impressed. It's also a very nice ride. The suspension is really top notch. You know, you can tell as soon as you jump on a bike whether it's got expensive or cheap suspension. You can tell that this has got expensive suspension. In fact, even before you get on it, because it's got one of those telltale sort of gold remote reservoirs on the rear, which is normally a sign of decent suspension. I think it was sort of Öhlins that did that first and had the sort of gold remote reservoir for the rear shock. The front suspension's really good as well. I'm not sure how much travel it's got, but it seems to have quite a bit. Big chunky gold forks, and just rides really nicely. Even here I'm sort of, this is quite a smooth road, but I've been over some fairly bad ones earlier and it just soaked everything up. It doesn't jar like some bikes do. It's firm as you'd expect with a sort of performance orientated bike, but not uncomfortable. And if you sort of hit manhole covers and things like that that are sunk a bit, it doesn't jar through the suspension. And there's no sort of bangs or knocks. It feels really solid and well put together. It changes direction nicely too. And interestingly, again, a good sort of sign of the suspension, there's a particular road near where I live. It's got a big sweeping corner that you think is lovely the first time you go around it, and then you discover it's got a big channel that goes mid-corner all the way across it. On some bikes that would completely take you offline. On this it just held its line perfectly. So because I know it's there, I could try it slower than I'd normally take that corner, but I could test out the suspension, and like I say, it passed that with flying colours. Really good suspension. So I talked about the engine earlier, but I didn't really mention the gearbox. So it's got a slip assist clutch, but sometimes they can feel like there's no engine braking. This one doesn't. The gearbox itself is great, super quick. The biting point of the clutch is quite high, which took a little bit of getting used to initially. I think that was just getting used to it, and is quite on-off, but again that sort of matches the performance element of things. But yeah, the box itself is super slick and smooth, easy to find neutral, no false neutrals or anything. Yeah, it's great. So let's do my usual positives and negatives. So the three biggest positives about this bike. First of all is its uniqueness, really, in various different aspects. So there's not many pure performance type V-twins out there, and certainly none that are sort of flat tracker style, and well, even saying flat tracker style I think is doing it a disservice. It's a flat tracker for the street. It's not just a styling exercise and a rebodied other bike. This bike's been built from the ground up as a proper flat tracker. I even discovered that it's built in the same factory in, I think, Switzerland, where their race flat tracker is actually built. So it's not just a styling exercise like some of these things. Number 2 is sort of linked to number 1 really. It's to do with the technicalities of this bike and just how technical it is, and it really shows when you're riding that everything's been thought about and there's so many details. So one example of that is obviously the engine is as low as possible. It's a big engine, so you want to get the weight as low as you can. But even things like this fuel tank isn't the real fuel tank. The fuel tank's actually tucked at the back, and the pipe just goes from here down there. And the sort of rear, not chassis, but rear subframe is the same one as their race flat tracker. Like I say, it's not just a styling exercise. So that's number 2, is the technicalities. And again, there's all these great mechanical technicalities, but there's also the sort of technology in this. So sort of lean angle ABS, the TFT where you can change everything. Sometimes with electronics you feel like they're interfering, but that's not the case with this bike. And if you wanted, you could actually switch absolutely everything off anyway. And number 3, I think, is just, it manages to be a complete hooligan bike, and it delivers more to you when you're riding it like that. I don't think it's a great commuter. I think the fueling's a bit dodgy below 3,000 revs, so it's not great for in and out of traffic. But when you pin it, if you're out on the open road, it's amazing. And some sports bikes you don't realise how fast you're going. This you do. So I think sort of grin factor is brilliant, and fun factor. Like I say, I just consider it a hooligan bike, but strangely it also feels that this now at sort of 50 kilometres an hour, it still feels composed and feels quality. But then when you are up that rev range going quicker, then you feel like you're going quick. But you don't have to go ridiculous speeds out on the road to enjoy yourself. Of course it can go ridiculous speeds. I think anything above 3rd gear and you're into licence losing territory really. But yeah, I think if you want something that's just an absolute hoot that you're going to use for those kinds of rides, then it's spot on. So any negatives with the bike? A few niggly things. Things like the style of the back is great, but as I discovered yesterday in the wet, then that rear mudguard doesn't really do much, so my back got completely wet, and you could see the seat behind me was covered in mud and wet as well. So like I say, that's a niggly thing. The biggest one is around town, then the low rev fueling. It's quite lumpy. So unless you're above 3,000 or 4,000 revs, which is typically not when you're just tootling around and trying to manoeuvre at low speed, then the idle is all over the place, and that's particularly noticeable when the bike's cold as well. Once it warms up it seems to improve, but when it's cold then you can really see it and hear it hunting. So price wise, these start, I think it's around 12, but this particular model that's the sort of race replica one is 14. So it's not a cheap bike, but it's quality, so it's around what you'd expect really. So that's it for this week. I hope you found that useful. Please do subscribe. I upload new videos every week, and I've got some goodies coming up, and hopefully see you again next week.